Well, this afternoon we're talking to GlynMartin about his work with the WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organisation, which I understand is something which combats counterfeiting and piracy. Can you tell us about your connection with WIPO?
Well, yes. I mean, I have to say that WIPO is more than just combating piracy. It's about promoting intellectual property rights throughout the world as a means of achieving development. I first had a contact with WIPO in about 1999 when I was working at the UN Staff College in Turin, and I trained a couple of people there on distance learning and how to use distance learning for their activities. Then after that, they employed me to create their first distance learning course, and I worked for them full-time from about 2001 to 2003 on leave from the university. And so I was involved in the first ever distance learning course, which was a primer, if you like, on intellectual property, which has sold over 90,000, or not sold because they give it away. It's actually had 90,000 students study it, and it's currently in 7 languages. So it's been their biggest course by a long way, in fact.
And what are you doing now? Are you developing it further?
Yes, I'm revisiting that course because since I left WIPO, there's been almost a sea change in how the organisation regards intellectual property. In the past, when I was there, intellectual property was promoted as something which was integral with trade and integral with economic development. It wasn't at that time seen as a tool for cultural development or social development or health development or any of those sort of aspects of development. But in about 2005, Brazil and Argentina and other countries forced through a change in the way that WIPO thinks about using intellectual property. And what they did is they produced what was called a development agenda. And that has got 45 particular tasks and specific things to do. But what it meant was that the course that I'd originally been in charge of writing back in the early part of the decade now has to be rewritten to reflect the new agenda and the new way of thinking and the new way of promoting IP. It's not that copyright has changed in itself, it's just that people's approaches to copyright now say that maybe limitations to what you can do or free use of it are as important as the protection of copyright. So it's a subtle change, but for WIPO, a huge philosophical change. And so now I'm looking at the course that I wrote 10 years ago, which is quite a salutary experience, and working with a professor in Canada, who is an expert in the development agenda of WIPO, and we're producing a new version of the course, which should be finished sometime at the end of February.
And what sort of people take the course?
Oh, it's really interesting because it's one of the only courses I know that has very many more people in the developing world taking it than take it in the developed world. And that's really pleasing because that was the target audience. And so you get a lot of developing countries taking the course, a lot of people. When I was there, the majority of people were in India, because India at that time was starting its really big economic expansion. A lot of people were interested in intellectual property. There are a lot of people now taking it in China, because when I was at WIPO, China had no intellectual property regime at all. And they introduced an intellectual property law as part of their entrance into WIPO and the World Trade Organization and the world trading blocks, in effect. So you find that it's people in the developing countries that are, by and large, the majority taking it. Very few people take it in France, for example, and very few people take it in England. Very, very few people take it in Canada or US. The majority of the people are in the developing countries or recently developed countries.
And should more people in the already developed countries be taking it, do you think?
Well, I think it's a useful primer. I mean, if you want to get over the common mistakes that people make about copyright and patents and trademarks, and then it's a very useful way of sorting all those things out. So I think if you want to know about intellectual property, then there's no reason why people can't take it in any country. But the actual demand seems to be coming from the developing world.
And how would people find out about it? Maybe somebody who watches this video and thinks, well, I'd like to know more about it. How would they do that?
Well, I'm hoping you can put a link from the website. That would be good. There is a section within WIPO in Geneva called the WIPO Academy. And they are responsible for producing distance learning courses. And they produce this one, which is a free, anyone can register on it. And then they go on to second and third level courses, which are specialist courses in copyright or trademarks or licensing IP. And they ask for some payment for that. But I think if it's someone from developing countries, there's different fee structures. So you pay less if you're from some country compared to another country.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to tell us about the course, the new course that's coming out in February?
Well, I think that quite interestingly, we're not actually changing very much in terms of the media that we use. It is basically a text plus quizzes plus SAQs plus audio segments. And the reason we used that back in 2000 was that we wanted people to have access to the course, and the developing world didn't have fast internet. Well, that's still the case. And I think one of the reasons we got 90,000 students studying it was because we didn't use video and we didn't use things which really were difficult to deliver all over the world. So it stayed pretty much the same, the media mix that we're using. So that's quite interesting that we got it right then, and it's probably still right to have that same mix.
And what about another 10 years' time? Do you think you're going to be rewriting it then? Or do you think this is going to last for quite a long time?
Well, I'd love to be rewriting it forever, really. But intellectual property laws are national laws. That's quite important to say. And national laws can change, but WIPO is concerned about those things that are generic to the whole world. And so the principles don't change that often. The principles of copyright, the principles of patents have not changed very much in years. Maybe the length of the copyright changes, but that would be a national change, a national law. So I don't think it's going to change very much, but what is exciting about this course is there's been a whole change of philosophy around it. And that happened very quickly, and who's to know if there'll not be another change of philosophy or another way of looking at intellectual property.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Glyn.
Thank you.